My name is Genevieve Sterling, and at 52, I believed I had my future neatly mapped out until Hurricane Helena upended everything. As Cape Coral's senior emergency planner, I've spent over 15 years bracing for worst-case scenarios. But nothing in my manuals ever prepared me for losing a cat named Shadow. The evacuation drill had gone off flawlessly, every detail executed as planned. Yet, when I stepped back into my apartment, I found the door ajar, rain spilling onto the carpet like an unwelcome guest. Shadow, my gray tabby and faithful companion for the past 3 years, was gone. Shadow, I called into the storm, my voice lost in the howling wind. The streets were flooding fast, and I had maybe 2 hours before the real hurricane hit. I drove through abandoned neighborhoods, checking every shelter and safe house on my emergency list. Nothing. By the time I reached the old fairgrounds on the outskirts of town, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. That's when I saw her. A woman in mud-stained khakis was coaxing a massive Bengal tiger back into a transport cage, speaking in low, soothing tones that somehow cut through the storm noise. Her blonde hair was plastered to her head, but she moved with absolute confidence around the anxious animal. "Easy, Sasha, just a few more steps," she murmured. I should have driven away. Instead, I found myself walking toward danger, drawn by something I couldn't name. "Excuse me," I called out, trying not to startle the tiger. "I'm looking for a missing cat." She turned, and I saw eyes the color of deep ocean water. Despite the chaos around us, she smiled. "I'm Cassandra Cass Vance, circus animal trainer." She gestured to the cages behind her. "What's your cat look like?" "Gray tabby, green collar. His name is Shadow. Cats usually hide during storms. You check the old warehouse district." I shook my head, studying her face. There was something magnetic about the way she commanded respect from dangerous animals while maintaining such gentle composure. "I know those buildings. Help me load these last 2 tigers, and I'll show you where strays usually shelter." Working beside her felt strangely natural. When we both reached for the same heavy flashlight, our fingers touched briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through me, and from her quick intake of breath, I knew she felt it too. We found Shadow 2 hours later, trapped under fallen debris at an abandoned textile warehouse. Cassandra's animal intuition had led us directly to him. "There," she whispered, pointing to a gap between concrete slabs. "See those green eyes?" Together, we carefully moved the rubble. Cassandra's hands were steady and sure, guiding mine when I hesitated. When Shadow finally emerged, frightened but unharmed, I felt tears mixing with the rain on my cheeks. "Thank you," I said, meaning more than just the rescue. Cassandra stepped closer, rain dripping from her hair. "Genevieve, right? You mentioned your name earlier." "Yes, I'm glad we found him." The space between us seemed to shrink despite the storm raging around us. Before I could second guess this myself, I leaned in and kissed her softly. Her lips were warm against mine, tasting of rain and something sweeter I couldn't identify. When we pulled apart, she was smiling that same quiet smile that had first caught my attention. "We should get out of this weather," she said. I nodded, but something had shifted fundamentally in those few seconds. At 52, I thought I knew who I was. No, I wasn't so sure. 3 days after the storm passed, I couldn't stop thinking about Cassandra Vance. Her business card sat on my kitchen counter. Simple black text: Cassandra Vance, animal trainer, traveling circus. No permanent address, just a phone number. I called her Tuesday morning. "Genevieve," she answered on the first ring like she'd been expecting me. "How's Shadow?" "Hiding under my bed, but eating again." I paused, searching for the right words. "I was wondering if you'd like coffee sometime. I'd like that very much." We met at Marina Cafe that afternoon. Cassandra looked different in civilian clothes, softer somehow, but those ocean blue eyes still held that same intensity I remembered from the storm. 15 years, she said when I asked about her work. "Started when I was 17. My parents died in a car accident and the circus took me in. That's young to be working with dangerous animals." She stirred her coffee slowly maybe, but tigers are honest. They tell you exactly what they're thinking through body language. Humans are much more complicated. I found myself leaning forward, studying her face. "You've been moving from city to city all this time? Never stayed anywhere longer than 3 months?" "Until now." Something in her tone made my pulse quicken. "What's different about Cape Coral?" She met my eyes across the table. "I think you know." After coffee, she insisted on showing me the circus grounds. The place buzzed with activity despite the recent storm damage. Performers practice routines while workers repaired equipment. This is my world, Cassandra said, leading me past colorful trailers toward a series of large animal enclosures. Controlled chaos sounds familiar. Disaster planning is pretty much the same thing. She laughed and the sound made something flutter. In my chest, show me. I pulled out my phone, opening the emergency management app I designed. See this? Real-time weather data, evacuation routes, resource allocation, everything mapped and predicted. Fascinating. Her finger traced the screen, accidentally brushing mine. You try to control the uncontrollable. And you work with creatures. That could kill you in seconds. Trust, she said simply. It all comes down to trust. We walked deeper into her domain, past sleeping lions and chattering monkeys. Cassandra moved with unconscious grace, checking on each animal, adjusting water bowls, speaking in low, reassuring tones. They respond to confidence, she explained. Animals sense fear, uncertainty. You have to project calm authority. I watched her hands as she worked, remembering how they'd felt guiding mine through the rescue. Strong but gentle, capable of soothing wild beasts. Genevieve, her voice was softer now. Can I ask you something personal? My heart rate spiked. Sure, that. Kiss the other night. Was it just adrenaline? The question hung between us like a challenge. I could lie, make excuses, retreat back to my safe, predictable life. Instead, I stepped closer. No, I whispered. It wasn't. She reached up, cupping my face with those same steady hands. This time when she kissed me, there was no storm, no emergency. No excuse. Just her lips against mine and the sudden understanding that everything I thought I knew about myself was about to change. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. I've never felt this before, she admitted. Neither have I. The confession surprised me with its honesty. The circus continued its evening routines, but we might as well have been alone in the universe. At 52, I was discovering desires I didn't know existed. Drawn to a woman whose very presence challenged everything about my carefully ordered world. What happens now? I asked. Cassandra smiled, that mysterious smile. I guess we find out together. 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments, and careful navigation around my professional life. I invited Cassandra to the Emergency Operations Center on a quiet Thursday afternoon, curious how she'd react to my world of charts, monitors, and systematic control. This is impressive, she said, running her fingers along the curved bank of screens displaying real-time weather data. You really can predict disasters to a degree. We analyze patterns, probabilities. I pulled up Hurricane Helena's tracking data. See these wind speeds, ocean temperatures, everything follows predictable models. Cassandra studied the colorful radar displays with genuine fascination. In the circus, we rate animal behavior the same way. Patterns tell you when a tiger is about to attack or when an elephant's getting anxious. I watched her absorb the information, her quick intelligence evident in the questions she asked. When the afternoon simulation alarm sounded, she stepped back to observe me coordinate the drill. Team Alpha, initiate evacuation protocol 7, I spoke into my headset. Monitoring multiple data streams simultaneously, route all coastal residents. Through checkpoint Delta. For 20 minutes, I commanded the mock disaster response, feeling the familiar rush of managing controlled chaos. When it ended, I found Cassandra watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. What? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. You're magnificent when you take charge, she said quietly. Completely in your element. The admiration in her voice sent heat rushing through me. No one had ever looked at me that way during work, like I was something powerful and desirable. Your turn, I said, deflecting the intensity. Show me more of what you do. That evening at the circus grounds, Cassandra led me into the big cat's training area. 3 tigers lounged in spacious enclosures, their golden eyes tracking our movement. This is Raja, she said, approaching the largest male. He's been with me 8 years. I stayed back, but Cassandra beckoned me closer. Trust me, she positioned herself between me and the tiger, her hand steady on my arm. Animals read energy right now. You're broadcasting fear because that's a giant carnivore. He's also curious about you. Her voice dropped to that hypnotic tone I'd heard during the storm. Breathe with me, slow and deep. Standing behind her, I felt her body relax against mine, her warmth, her scent. The steady rhythm of her breathing gradually calmed my racing heart. The tiger watched us with intelligent eyes, no longer seeming quite so threatening. Better, Cassandra murmured. He knows you're with me now. We spent another hour among her animals, Cassandra explaining the subtle body language that governed their interactions. Her passion for her work was infectious, and I found myself drawn deeper into her world of intuition and instinct. Coffee? I suggested as we left the grounds. My place this time. At my apartment, the conversation flowed easier than ever before. We sat on my couch, shadow purring between us, discussing the philosophy behind our different approaches to managing unpredictable forces. You build systems to contain chaos, Cassandra observed, tucking her legs under her. I work within it. Both require respect for what you're dealing with and trust. She reached across to stroke Shadow's fur, her knuckles brushing my thigh. Trust that your preparations work. Trust that the animal won't hurt you. The casual contact sent electricity up my leg. What about personal trust? Her blue eyes met mine. Harder to earn, easier to break. We were sitting closer now, the space between us charged with possibility. When she leaned toward me, I didn't pull away. This kiss was different from the others, deeper, more deliberate. Her hands found my face, then my hair, pulling me closer as if she couldn't get enough. I responded with passion that surprised me, my body awakening to sensations I'd forgotten existed. Genevieve, she whispered against my lips. Yes, we moved together to my bedroom, hands exploring, clothes disappearing between kisses. When? She laid me back on the bed. Her touch was reverent, patient. She mapped my body like she was memorizing it, her mouth following the path of her hands. I had never experienced anything like the way she made me feel, cherished, desired, completely alive. When she moved above me, our bodies fitting together perfectly, I understood why people used words like electricity and fire to describe passion. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered endearment built something beautiful between us. Afterwards, we lay tangled together, her head on my chest as my fingers combed through her blonde hair. I started, then stopped. Neither have. She said softly, not like this. At 52, I was discovering parts of myself that had been dormant for decades. In Cassandra's arms, I felt young and reckless and utterly content. Everything was about to change. The next 3 weeks blurred together like pages from a dream I was afraid to wake from. Cassandra and I fell into a rhythm. Coffee in the mornings, before my shifts, stolen lunches when her circus schedule allowed, evenings at my apartment where she'd cook while I worked on disaster protocols. But the way she looked at me was starting to confuse everyone around me. Genevieve, you're practically glowing, Julian observed during our weekly planning meeting. He'd been my closest friend and colleague for 8 years. The only person who knew about my divorce and the string of disappointing relationships that followed. What's going on? I tried to deflect. Just feeling good about the new evacuation protocols. Julian leaned back in his chair, studying me with those sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. You've been different for weeks, distracted but happy. There's someone, isn't there? Heat rose in my cheeks. Maybe male someone or female someone. The question caught me off guard. I'd never discussed my sexuality with anyone because I'd never questioned it myself. But sitting there under Julian's knowing gaze, I realized I couldn't lie. Female, I whispered. His face broke into a grin. Finally, I was wondering when you'd figure that out. What do you mean, Genevieve? You've been going through the motions with men your entire adult life. I've watched you settle for comfortable instead of passionate. This is the first time you've seemed truly alive. That evening, I shared Julian's reaction with Cassandra as we walked along the beach. She listened quietly, her hand warm in mine as waves lapped on our feet. Are you worried about what people will think? She asked, terrified, I admitted. At 52, I thought I knew who I was. Maybe you're just discovering who you really are. Meanwhile, Cassandra was facing her own pressures. The circus manager, Laszlo, had been pushing her about the end-of-season schedule, eager to move the show to their next location. But for the first time in her career, Cassandra was hesitating. He asked me 3 times this week when I'd be ready to pack up. She told me one evening as we cooked dinner together, I keep making excuses. What do you want to do? She turned from the stove, her blue eyes serious. I want to stay. I want to see where this goes. The vulnerability in her voice made my heart ache. I pulled her close, tasting the future in her kiss. That weekend, she showed me her trailer for the first time. It was smaller than my apartment's bathroom, but every inch was organized with military precision. Photos of animals she'd trained covered one wall, while the other held maps marking 15 years of constant movement. This is my life, she said, sitting on the narrow bed. Everything I own fits in this space. I studied the maps, tracing routes that crisscross the entire country. You've never stayed anywhere long enough to have a home. Never wanted to. She pulled me down beside her until now. We made love that night in her tiny space, our bodies pressed together in the confined quarters. I'd never felt closer to anyone, physically or emotionally. The intimacy was overwhelming. Her whispered confessions against my skin. The way she held me like I was something precious she was afraid to break. In the darkness afterward, she traced patterns on my arm while I listened to her breathing. "Genevieve," she said softly. I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hit me like a physical force. At 52, I thought I understood love, the comfortable companionship, the shared responsibilities, the gradual fading of passion into routine. What I felt for Cassandra was nothing like that. It was wild and consuming and terrifying. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," I whispered back. She turned in my arms, and even in the dim light, I could see tears in her eyes. "What happens now?" "I don't know, but we figure it out together." The next morning brought unexpected complications. Sebastian appeared at my apartment door, his weathered face grim with determination. "Miss Sterling, I need to discuss Cassandra. Vance with you." My stomach dropped, but I invited him in, pouring coffee while he explained the situation. "The circus leaves Cape Coral in 2 weeks. Cassandra has a contract, obligations to fulfill." His accent made the words sound more ominous. "She's becoming distracted, unreliable. This affects the safety of everyone. What are you saying?" "I'm saying, whatever this is between you two needs to end. Cassandra belongs with the circus. It's her family, her life." After he left, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the coffee growing cold in my hands. At 52, was I selfish to want to change someone's entire life? Was I asking too much from a woman who'd spent 15 years following her calling? When Cassandra arrived that evening, I could see the same conflict written across her beautiful features. The magic between us was real, but the obstacles were mounting. We had decisions to make, and time was running out. The ultimatum came on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I was reviewing evacuation protocols when Cassandra called, her voice strained in a way I'd never heard before. "I need to see you. Can you meet me at the marina?" 20 minutes. Later, I found her sitting on a weathered bench, staring out at the water. Her usually confident posture was gone, replaced by something that looked disturbingly like defeat. "What's wrong?" I sat beside her, resisting the urge to take her hand. In such a public space, Laszlo gave me an ultimatum. She turned to face me, her blue eyes clouded with frustration. "The circus is hemorrhaging money. Ticket sales are down, and he thinks a publicity stunt will help." My stomach clenched. "What kind of publicity stunt?" "A fake engagement with Sebastian, one of the acrobats." The words came out bitter and sharp. "Traditional romance sells tickets, apparently. The daring animal trainer and the handsome performer." I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. "And if you refuse, I lose my job, my animals, everything I've built for 15 years. We sat in silence, watching boats drift across the calm water. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my career preparing for disasters, but I had no protocol for this kind of devastation. "There has to be another way," I said finally. Laszlo made it clear. "Either I play along with the engagement charade, or he replaces me before we leave Cape Coral." Her voice cracked slightly. "Genevieve, I can't lose my animals. They're my responsibility." 3 days later, the Cape Coral Gazette ran a front-page story featuring a photo of Cassandra and Sebastian embracing outside the circus gates. "Circus romance blooms under big top," the headline proclaimed. The article detailed their whirlwind courtship and included quotes about their deep connection and shared dreams. I stared at the newspaper in my kitchen, feeling something die inside my chest. The rational part of my mind understood her impossible position, but the emotional part felt betrayed, used, disposable. When she called that afternoon, I let it go to voicemail. "Genevieve, please, it's not real." "You know it's not real. I had to protect my career, my animals." "Call me back, please." I deleted the message without listening to it twice. Julian found me at the emergency center that evening, working late on protocols that didn't need updating. "Saw the newspaper," he said quietly, settling into a chair across from my desk. "Don't. She's been calling the main line all day, trying to reach you." I kept typing, pretending to focus on evacuation route calculations. "There's nothing to discuss." "She made her choice, did she? Or was the choice made for her? I finally looked up, meeting his concerned gaze. What difference does it make? She's engaged to someone else. Genevieve, you're 52 years old. You finally found someone who makes you happy, who makes you feel alive, and you're going to throw it away over a publicity stunt. It's not that simple, isn't it? You've been running from emotional risk your entire life. This is just another excuse. His words stung because they held a truth I refused to accept. I had spent years choosing safe over passionate, predictable over thrilling. But seeing Cassandra in another person's arms, even pretend arms, ignited every abandonment fear I'd carried since my divorce. The next evening, Cassandra appeared at my apartment. She looked drained, her usual confident posture replaced by something desperate and pleading. 5 minutes, she said when I opened the door. Just 5 minutes to explain. There's nothing to explain. I saw the newspaper. It's a lie, all of it. She moved closer, her voice urgent. Sebastian and I are friends, nothing more. He's dating one of the costume designers, but they have to hide it because Laszlo forbids relationships between different departments. I wanted to trust her, but the image was seared into my memory. You looked pretty convincing because my career depends on it. Genevieve, I'm stuck. If I don't play along, I lose everything I've worked for, but if I do play along, I lose you. Her voice cracked. And losing you feels like losing everything. That matters. We stood in my doorway, the weight of impossible choices suspended between us. I could see the pain in her eyes, could hear the honesty in her voice, but I could also see the newspaper picture, the engagement notice, the public statement that she belonged to someone else. I need time to think, I said finally. How much time? I don't know. She nodded slowly, tears welling in those ocean blue eyes. I love you, Genevieve. Whatever happens, I need you to know that. After she left, I sat alone in my living room with Shadow purring in my lap, trying to figure out how something so beautiful had become so complex. At 52, I thought I'd learned to guard myself from this kind of pain. Clearly, I'd learned nothing. The notification arrived at 6:47 a.m. on a Friday. It would reshape my idea of running away. Emergency deployment opportunity, Hurricane Disaster Relief Coordinator, Puerto Rico. Duration, 6 weeks minimum. Immediate. Departure required. I stared at my phone screen, finger poised over the accept button. Puerto Rico meant distance, distraction, purpose. It meant not having to see circus posters around Cape Coral, or wonder if Cassandra was still performing her role with Sebastian. I hit accept before I could second-guess myself. 2 hours later, I was tossing clothes into a suitcase when Julian knocked, running away. Accepting a professional opportunity, I corrected, not looking up from my packing. Same thing. He sank onto my bed, watching me fold emergency gear with robotic efficiency. You're making a mistake. The mistake was getting involved with someone whose life doesn't fit with mine. Her life doesn't fit with anyone's. That's what makes her special. I zipped the suitcase with sharp finality. Well, now she can be special with Sebastian. 3 days into my Puerto Rico assignment, coordinating relief efforts for Hurricane Maria's aftermath, I finally felt like myself again. 12-hour days managing supply chains, coordinating with FEMA, organizing the methodical rebuilding of basic services. No emotional entanglements, no impossible decisions, just problems with clear solutions. My phone buzzed constantly with messages I refused to read. Julian keeping me informed on Cape Coral operations. Unknown numbers that might have been Cassandra trying different ways to contact me. I deleted them all. Meanwhile, 1,500 miles away, Cassandra was putting on the performance of her life. She attended publicity events with Sebastian, posed for promotional photos, gave interviews about their romance while dying inside. Every smile felt like a lie. Every stage kiss another step away from the woman she loved. The circus moved through its final weeks in Cape Coral, but Cassandra's heart wasn't in it. Laszlo noticed her distraction during rehearsals, the way she performed motions that once came naturally. The engagement publicity is working, he told her after a particularly strong ticket sales day. But your performance is lacking. Animal sense when you're not fully here. He was right. Raja had nearly swiped her during a routine they'd done perfectly. Hundreds of times. The other trainers were talking, questioning if Cassandra was losing her touch. The breaking point came during a photo shoot for the local entertainment magazine. Sebastian and Cassandra posed by the big cat's enclosure, his arm around her waist while she forced another smile. Could you look more in love? The photographer called out. This needs to look real. Sebastian leaned closer, whispering in her ear. I'm sorry about all this. I know how you feel about her. You do? The emergency planner. Everyone can see it when you two are together. The way you look at her like she hung the stars. Tears threatened, but Cassandra held them back. It doesn't matter now. She won't talk to me. Have you tried really fighting for her? Not just explaining, but showing her she means more to you than all this. He gestured around the circus grounds. Sometimes people need grand gestures. That night, Cassandra called Julian at his home number. She's in Puerto Rico, he said without preamble. Hurricane relief coordination. Won't answer my calls about anything personal. I need to talk to her, Julian. I need to explain that none of this is real, then quit the false engagement. Prove it. Means nothing. If I quit, I lose everything. My job, my animals, my career. Julian was quiet for a long moment. And if you don't quit, you lose her forever. Genevieve doesn't do second chances when she feels betrayed. The truth hit Cassandra like a physical blow. She'd spent so much energy trying to preserve her professional life that she was giving up the personal life she'd finally found. Hanging up, she sat in her trailer staring at the maps on her wall. 15 years of movement of never staying anywhere long enough to build something real. She'd found the person she wanted to stay for, and she was losing her anyway. 2 weeks later, Julian drove to my San Juan hotel unannounced. What the hell are you doing here? I asked, finding him in the lobby looking tired and resolved. Staging an intervention? He pulled out his phone, showing me dozens of missed calls and unread messages from her. She's been trying to reach you for 3 weeks. I don't want to hear it. Too bad. He grabbed my arm, steering me toward the hotel bar. You're going to listen anyway? Over drinks that I desperately needed, Julian laid out everything. The impossible choice Laszlo had forced on Cassandra. Sebastian's real relationship. The way she'd been going through the motions of her fake engagement while clearly miserable. She loves you, Genevieve. Truly loves you. And you're letting fear ruin the best thing that ever happened to you. I'm protecting myself. You're being a coward. His words cut deep because they were true. At 52, you found your person, your real person, and you're throwing it away because loving her requires risk. That night, alone at my hotel room, I finally listened to her voicemails. 23 messages of growing desperation, love, explanation, and finally, acceptance. The last one shattered my heart. I understand why you can't forgive me. I made choices that hurt you, even if I felt forced into making them. I just want you to know that loving you was the most real thing I've ever known. Whatever happens next, that was real. Hurricane Isabella approached Cape Coral with Category 4 strength while I was still in Puerto Rico finishing relief coordination. Work. The emergency alert pinged on my phone at 3 a.m., and I was on the first flight home 6 hours later. My team needed me, but honestly, I needed to be there too. Running away to Puerto Rico had taught me that disasters couldn't be handled from a distance, and neither could love. The emergency operations center hummed with controlled chaos when I arrived. Multiple screens showed Isabella's projected path, a direct hit on Cape Coral within 18 hours. Thank God you're back, Julian said, relief clear in his voice. This will be the biggest evacuation in city history. I threw myself into work, coordinating shelter assignments and transportation routes, but part of my mind kept drifting to the circus grounds, wondering if they'd evacuated the animals safely. At 2 p.m., my worst fears were confirmed. An emergency call came through on the citywide frequency. This is Cape Coral Animal Control. We have a situation at the fairgrounds. Multiple exotic animals still on site, and we lack the expertise to move them safely. My blood ran cold. Where's the circus staff? Most evacuated with the equipment trucks this morning. There's one trainer still here, refusing to leave without the animals. Cassandra. Of course it was Cassandra. I'm going, I announced, grabbing my emergency kit. Julian caught my arm. Genevieve, you can't leave the command center during the biggest evacuation in our history. Those animals will die if they're not moved properly, and so will she. So will a lot of other people if you abandon your post. He was right, but I couldn't make myself handle it. You know the protocols. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to the deserted circus grounds in driving rain and wind that already felt dangerous. Most of the trailers and equipment were gone, leaving only the animal enclosures and a few emergency vehicles. I found Cassandra in the big cats area trying to coax 3 terrified tigers into a reinforced transport truck. She was soaked through, her blonde hair plastered to her head, but her voice remained steady and calm. Easy, Raja. Easy, boy. Cassandra, I shouted over the wind. She turned around, shock and relief fighting across her beautiful features. Genevieve, what are you doing here? Trying to save your stubborn life. Why haven't you evacuated? I can't leave them. She gestured toward the animals. The transport company vanished when the evacuation order came. These animals are my responsibility. The wind howled around us, sending debris flying past the enclosures. We had maybe 2 hours before Isabella's full force hit. Where do we take them? The emergency shelter at Riverside High. It's reinforced concrete built to handle Category 5 winds. Working together felt natural despite everything that had happened between us. I helped her load the tigers while she maintained the careful balance of authority and reassurance they needed. One by one, we moved lions, tigers, and bears into reinforced trucks. That's the last of them, Cassandra said as we secured the final transport. We need to go now. The drive to Riverside High took us through increasingly dangerous conditions. Trees bent at impossible angles and debris filled the roads. Twice we had to stop to clear fallen branches blocking our path. At the school, we rushed the animals into the reinforced gymnasium just as Isabella's outer bands reached full strength. The building shuddered with each gust, but the concrete walls held firm. We're trapped here until it passes, I said, checking the weather data on my emergency radio. Cassandra nodded, moving between the animal crates to check on her charges. In the dim emergency lighting, I watched her work with the same quiet competence that had first attracted me months ago. They're scared but safe, she announced finally, then turned to face me directly for the first time since my arrival. Thank you, she said simply, for coming, for helping. I couldn't let you face this alone. We settled against the far wall, listening to Isabella rage outside. The storm's intensity created an oddly intimate atmosphere in our concrete shelter, forcing proximity we'd been avoiding for weeks. Genevieve, I need you to know something, Sandra said quietly. I broke the engagement 3 days ago. My heart stuttered. What? I told Laszlo I couldn't continue the charade. Sebastian and I made a joint statement that we decided to remain friends. She met my eyes across the dim space. I quit the circus, that your animals, your career mean nothing without you. Her voice was steady, certain. I realized I was protecting a life I didn't want anymore. The constant moving, the isolation, the pretending. I want something real for once. The building groaned around us as Isabella's eye wall approached, but I barely heard it. What does that mean? It means I'm staying in Cape Coral. I applied for a position with the County Animal Control Division. It means I want to build something permanent, something honest. She paused. It means I love you, and I'm willing to fight for us if you'll let me. The confession hung between us like a bridge I could either cross or burn. At 52, I'd spent so much time protecting myself from exactly this kind of vulnerability. But sitting in that emergency shelter, surrounded by the animals she'd risked her life to save, I finally understood what courage looked like. I love you too, I whispered. She moved closer, and when she kissed me, it tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings. The storm raged outside, but inside our makeshift sanctuary, we were finally home. The morning after Isabella passed, Cape Coral looked like a war zone. Downed power lines snaked across flooded streets and debris from destroyed buildings created an obstacle course of shattered glass and twisted metal. But inside Riverside High's reinforced shelter, we were alive and together. The city's lucky you came back, Cassandra, Cass Vance said as I coordinated recovery efforts for my emergency radio. Julian did well, but this needed your expertise. The city's lucky you stayed to save those animals. Animal Control said they would have been killed by flying debris. Over the next 3 days, we worked side by side coordinating the largest animal rescue operation in Cape Coral's history. The hurricane had scattered pets across the county, and Cassandra's expertise in animal behavior proved invaluable for reuniting traumatized animals with their families. She's incredible, Julian observed as we watched Cassandra coax a terrified German shepherd out from under a collapsed roof. The way she reads what they need earns their trust instantly. She saved my life too, I admitted in more ways than one. On Thursday night, exactly 1 week after the hurricane, Cassandra found me alone in my office at the emergency center, finalizing damage assessments. Working late again, I looked up to find her leaning against the door frame, still beautiful. Despite exhaustion from days of rescue work, her circus clothes had been replaced by practical county animal control uniforms, but those ocean blue eyes remained unchanged. Someone has to compile the final reports. She entered, closing the door behind her. I have news. Good news or bad news. Depends on your perspective. She sat across from my desk, suddenly nervous. The county offered me a permanent position as Emergency Animal Response Coordinator. It's a new role they created after seeing how the hurricane response worked. My heart lifted. That's wonderful. You'll be amazing at it. There's a catch. The position requires close coordination with the Human Emergency Response Team. She paused meaningfully, specifically with the Senior Disaster Planner. Meaning me, meaning you. We'd be working together regularly, coordinating joint responses, sharing office space occasionally. Her voice grew softer. Are you comfortable with that level of professional proximity? I studied her face, seeing the vulnerability beneath her professional question. Are you asking if I can work with you without letting personal feelings compromise my judgment? I'm asking if you want the chance to find out. The question hung between us, loaded with possibility and risk. Working together would mean daily contact, shared responsibilities, the potential for either beautiful partnership or devastating complications. There's something else, she continued. I need to address the trust issues between us. What I did with the fake engagement? The way I handled it, the way I let you feel betrayed. Cassandra, no, let me finish. Her eyes were intense, focused. I made choices based on fear. Fear of losing my career, my animals, my security. But I didn't fight hard enough for what really mattered. She reached into her bag, withdrawing an official-looking document. This is my final resignation from circus life. No contracts, no obligations, no going back. I'm done running from city to city, done prioritizing career stability over personal happiness. I took the document, scanning the formal language that represented the end of her 15-year nomadic life. Why now? I asked quietly. Because you're worth fighting for. Because what we have is worth building something permanent around. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to that hypnotic tone I remembered from our first night together. Because I'm 52 years old, and I finally understand the difference between existing and living. I'm 52, I corrected with a small smile. And I'm 32 and tired of pretending age matters when everything else fits perfectly. She stood moving around the desk to where I sat when she cubed my face in those steady hands. I felt my carefully maintained, professional composure cracking. Genevieve, I love you. Not the you that exists safely behind emergency protocols and disaster plans. I love the you that risked everything to save animals in a hurricane. The you that kissed me in the rain because it felt right. Her thumbs traced my cheekbones as she spoke, and I felt tears I didn't know I'd been holding back. I love you too, I whispered completely terrifyingly. This time, when she kissed me in my office with the door closed and the emergency center quiet around us, it felt like a promise. Her lips were soft and certain, her hands gentle but possessive. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. So, she murmured, ready to try coordinating disasters and falling deeper in love simultaneously with you. I'm ready for anything. Outside my office windows, Cape Coral was slowly rebuilding from Hurricane Isabella's damage. Construction crews worked through the night. Emergency services restored basic infrastructure and families began the process of putting their lives back together. Inside, two women who found each other against impossible odds were just beginning. 6 months after Hurricane Isabella, I stood in the newly constructed Cape Coral Emergency Animal Response Center, watching Cassandra train local volunteers in disaster animal rescue techniques. Her blonde hair caught the afternoon sunlight, streaming through tall windows, and that familiar confidence radiated from every gesture. Remember, stressed animals read your energy first, she explained to the group of firefighters and paramedics. Approach slowly, speak in low tones. Let them decide when they trust you. I'd accepted the promotion to Regional Emergency Management Director, a position that required less travel and more strategic planning. For the first time in my career, I'd chosen personal happiness over professional advancement, and I'd never felt more fulfilled. Miss Sterling, one of my new coordinators, appeared beside me. The state inspection team is here for the final walkthrough. The inspection was a formality. Our integrated human-animal emergency response program had become a model for other coastal cities. What we built together had saved dozens of lives during the smaller storms that followed Isabella. That evening, Cassandra and I walked along the same beach where we'd shared our deepest confessions a year earlier. Shadow followed at a safe distance, still cautious about sand, but unwilling to let us out of his sight. Nervous about tomorrow? She asked, squeezing my hand. Tomorrow marked 1 year since we'd found Shadow in that warehouse. Somehow, that night had become our unofficial anniversary. The moment when everything started, not nervous, excited. I stopped walking, turning to face her. There's something I want to tell you. Good something or bad something, depends on your perspective. I smiled, echoing her words from months earlier. I bought us a house. Her eyes widened. You what? A house? 3 bedrooms, 2 acres, space for an animal rehabilitation facility in the back. I pulled out my phone, showing her photos of the property I'd been secretly negotiating to purchase. I figured it was time we stopped living in my apartment like we're temporary. Tears gathered in those ocean blue eyes as she scrolled through. Images of our future home. Genevieve, it's perfect. There's more. The county approved your proposal for the permanent animal sanctuary. Full funding, staff positions, everything. She stared at me speechless for the first time since I'd known her. Why? She finally whispered. Because you saved me from a life I didn't realize was half-lived. Because watching you work with animals taught me what passion looks like. Because I love the way you make coffee and sing off-key in the shower and refuse to give up on anything. You believe in... She kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When we broke apart, she was smiling through tears. Does this mean you're officially asking me to move in with you? I'm asking you to build a life with me. A real life with roots and plans, and a future we create together. At 52 and 32, at any age that lets us be this happy. She reached into her jacket pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box that made my breath catch. Funny, you should mention building. A life together, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I was planning to ask you the same question. Inside the box were 2 simple silver bands, elegant and understated, but unmistakably commitment rings. Marry me, Genevieve, she whispered. Not legally, not yet. But really promise me forever, and I'll promise you the same. At 52, I thought I understood love, commitment, partnership. But standing on that beach with a woman who'd given up everything to be with me, I realized I'd never understood anything at all. Yes, I said, letting her slide the ring onto my finger. Yes to forever. 1 year later, as we stood in our backyard, watching rescued animals play in custom-built enclosures, Cassandra came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Any regrets? She asked, her chin resting on my shoulder. I leaned back against her warmth, watching that formerly injured hawk test its newly healed wings. About what? Falling in love with a circus animal trainer. Building a life I never planned. Learning that disaster planning works better with a partner who thinks entirely differently than I do. All of it. I turned in her arms, meeting those beautiful blue eyes that still made my heart race. Not a single one. That night, as we lay in our shared bed in our shared house, with our shared future stretching ahead of us, I realized something profound. For 15 years, I planned for every possible disaster except the one that mattered most. The disaster of living without really being alive. Cassandra had saved me from that disaster, and I'd saved her from a life of endless running. At 53 and 33, we were just getting started.